All right, so thank you all for joining us for the Overcoming Writer's Block and Perfectionist Tendencies workshop. Joining us today is Layla Barati from the UNLV Writing Center. And without further ado, I will go ahead and hand it over to her to get us started.
Hey, thank you so much. Are you all able to, does it seem clear from there, from your side? All right. Hello, everybody. I hope you've been enjoying the camp so far. So my name is Layla Barati, and I am the center coordinator, and I'm here to present on overcoming writer's block and perfectionist tendencies. So if you're anything like me, you've definitely experienced writer's block, and perfectionism kind of inhibits your writing process. That writer's block kind of, once it starts, it's really hard to kind of get out of it. So hopefully from this workshop, you'll come away with some things, strategies that you can use to kind of combat those when you face them. So in this workshop, we will discuss some reasons and common causes for writer's block. We'll define the infamous imposter syndrome. I'm sure you've heard of imposter syndrome before or even experienced it. We will examine the relationship between writer's block and perfectionism, because there's a relationship there. And we will identify some strategies for making time to write and maintaining focus as you write. We'll also hopefully learn some ways to write through writer's block and overcome that perfectionism. And right, so throughout this workshop, we will have some opportunities to do some free writing. So I kind of suggest if you have some paper and pencil at hand, or if you prefer to write on your laptop, that's totally fine. Just have something to write. So we're going to have some writing activities. So does this look familiar to you? So this meme, and we always use this meme. It's really funny. If honestly, if you're anything like me, this is exactly what I look like when I'm asked to write anything over 5 pages, sometimes even less than that. If you don't recognize this, this is from a show called The Good Place. I believe it's still on Netflix. If you're looking for something to binge, I recommend that one. But basically, it's just writing is always this overwhelming task, right? It's not easy. And anybody who tells you or says that it's easy is a liar. They are a liar, liar, pants on fire, because writing is difficult, even for the best of us. It's a process. It's not simply putting pen to paper or just fingers on a keyboard, right? It's reflecting on your interests and what you know. It's reading about topics. It's creating questions. It's talking to others for feedback. It's translating the thoughts in your head and organizing those thoughts. It's identifying audience needs. It's taking breaks, giving yourself a break, right? You're a human being, right? You're not a machine. As much as we'd like to just be these highly efficient robots who can create perfect writing every time, you have to give yourself breaks. It's also making outlines and the amount of notes and drafts that it takes to create writing, all on top of just the general revising, editing, proofreading that we know we have to do. It's no wonder that it's hard. Writing is hard, and it's okay to admit that it's hard, that we're not perfect from the get-go. So let's kind of talk about writer's block and what is writer's block essentially. So writing anxiety and writer's block are terms for mainly negative feelings about writing that we often encounter. And it might not happen every time we write or all the time when we write, which kind of gives us a hint that it's very much situational, right? This is not intrinsically inherently psychological, right? These feelings are situational and they do not reflect psychological attributes. So what does that mean? It's important to remember that sometimes we do come into the writing space with past experiences. Well, sometimes they're negative, right? Sometimes a professor might tell you something in the past, like, oh, you're not this is like not an excellent paper, or you might develop a perspective of yourself as a writer from like elementary school. And then you grow up kind of thinking, this whole time, like, I'm a horrible writer. I'm really just a math person. I'll never be good at writing. But it's important to recognize that we're not born writers, right? Writing is a skill that we develop over time. There's no such thing as a perfect writer. It's not helpful to compare ourselves to others either. And all of these things kind of contribute to like these negative feelings that we kind of bring with us to the table. And in grad school, right? We kind of think that we're supposed to be good writers at this point. That's not really how it works, right? Nobody creates this perfect piece. So, it's hard. But also, we encounter this thing called imposter syndrome. If you've ever encountered imposter syndrome or have ever felt it, feel free to type me in the chat. Or don't if you don't. But I definitely experience this a lot. I'm often thinking, like, I'm not good enough. Should I really be here? Should I, like, am I really qualified to do that? Right? A lot of times, grad students feel, I know people are commenting in the chat. Yeah, definitely. A lot of times we feel, especially as grad students, like, how did I get here? Is this a joke? Am I being pranked? Like, maybe I don't really know what I'm doing. But it's important to recognize that this happens even to the best of us. Like, even the most successful people have sometimes these feelings of imposter syndrome. It's this kind of pervasive feeling of self doubt and that you're a fraud, even though there's so much evidence that shows that, like, you deserve to be here. Like, you got here for a reason. And all of the steps that it took to get here, it's really important to recognize and give yourself that credit. And I know a lot of times, a grad student, especially in the beginning, you're new to the field, right? So you don't really have all of the knowledge that maybe your peers before you have, or your professors, your advisors, and things who have been working years in the field, right? Already have a basis. And to compare yourself to that is a little bit unfair, also. But it does contribute to these feelings of, like, being imposter. But it's important to recognize, like, okay, this is totally normal. You're well on your way to becoming a better writer and an expert in the field, right? So the first step is identify. But another thing that often gets in the way is this feeling of perfectionism, right? So there's this great quote from Anne Lamott, who she says, perfectionism will keep you cramped and insane your whole life. And it is the main obstacle between you and a shitty first draft. So really what often gets in the way is this idea of, like, it's gotta be perfect, right? It's not worthwhile if it's not perfect. And that oftentimes is what stops us from actually getting anything down. Right? I know for me personally, I'll spend so much money on these, like, amazing notebooks and things. And I'm like, oh, this is a great, unique, super cool notebook, and I'm going to use it all the time because it's so awesome. And then when it comes down to it, I won't write anything in it because I'm just like, oh, I can't sully this beautiful notebook with my crappy writing or even my handwriting either. Uh, so I'll just end up writing something on a scrap piece of paper, and that's what I end up using is a scrap piece of paper. It's kind of ironic because I let this kind of constraint of perfectionism stop me from actually doing anything, and anything that was actually worthwhile was just what I had written. This kind of framework of not being perfect, right? So as long as I had something written down, that's what I end up working with, and so I have all these notebooks that are, like, totally empty. So, letting yourself actually get something down, and not letting perfectionism cramp you into this tiny restrictive box is super, super important to recognize. So that's something that I wanted to bring up today. Another thing is using perfectionism as procrastination. So sometimes we postpone our work, and we're waiting for basically the perfect situation to allow ourselves to write. Right? So it has to be the perfect time of day. I'm a morning writer, so I have to write in the morning. So, oh, it's already 4 p.m., so it's right. I definitely do this all the time. Or the perfect location, right? Like, oh, I can only work in a cafe because there's noise and there's, like, no one that I know, so I can really just focus on what's around me. Or even the perfect mood, right? Like, oh, I'm not really in the mood to write, so I'm not going to write today. We let ourselves do that. Sometimes we never write. Or even finding the right sources too. Kind of limit ourselves to, like, I have to have perfect source. This source doesn't quite what I needed to do. So you'll kind of spiral and go down these, like, research spirals, right? All for the purpose of, like, kind of avoiding writing, right? Because you don't have the right source. So these are all the things that these are all ways that we let our perfectionism box us in. And this all contributes to this feeling of, like, writer's block. Like, why can't I get anything done? I feel like I'm doing a ton of research and I'm considering, like, places that I should write and the time of day. But these are all the ways that we kind of push towards ourselves. But if that doesn't resonate with you, there's also other causes of writing, like your inner critic, right? I know I'm really harsh to myself as a writer. if a professor or a teacher in elementary school a long time ago told me that I was bad at using semicolons, that'll stick in my brain forever, right? Like past criticism. So then I'll keep that and just say, I'll never be good at this. And we kind of take those things, even in grad school, we're adults and we're kind of like, why do I still have these feelings? I think it's important to kind of reflect on that because also there's fear of failure or rejection. Nobody likes to fail, right? Nobody likes to feel like they're not good at something or even success. If you're doing something really well and you're achieving it, then you're kind of faced with this idea of like, is this what I really want to be doing? Right? These are all things that kind of contribute to SWOT. And then also holding overly high expectations for yourself, right? I do this a lot. I always feel like, okay, got to do my absolute best to impress my committee, my professors, anything like that. Or even perceived expectations, right? From your committee or your professors. That also kind of transfers over. What are they going to think? Is my writing good enough? And there's also feeling burned out or distracted. Hello, burnout, right? I'm sure we've all experienced burnout at some point in our lives. That can really take a toll on your motivation to write, or even being distracted if you have a lot of things going on in your life. It's hard to do things when you have a lot of priorities. Low energy or diet, hydration, exercise, not taking care of your body really can contribute. Our brain needs brain food. Our bodies need water, sleep even. I know sometimes we tell ourselves like, okay, I'm fine. I got 4 hours of sleep. I'm good to go. After a while, your body is just, that's not the most productive thing. And it's not the kindest thing to do for your body either. Writing in new forms too can also contribute, right? If I don't know about you, but it's like not everybody walks out being like, "Oh, I've written 10,000 theses or dissertations," right? It's new and it's intimidating, and sometimes that just alone can cause you to freeze up and kind of paralyze you in beginning or starting. So, also, if something is difficult or if the subject matter is difficult, that also might demotivate you. You might feel like, well, I'm not smart enough, or this is too difficult. I really don't want to look into it. So, also, not having, sorry, too much or not enough to say. Right? Sometimes you have so many things to say, and then you realize, like, oh my gosh, where do I even start? Because I have so much knowledge. I've been doing research forever. I have so many things to say, but I don't know what's relevant. Which you can come to the Writing Center, by the way, to get help with that. We can kind of help you refine your ideas. Or even if you don't have enough to say, sometimes you're like, I know a lot, but I'm not really sure how to articulate it. I don't really know. I don't really feel like I have enough of the say in the subject. Or if you have too much, not enough to do. These are all kind of things that contribute. But the number one for me always is the approaching deadlines, right? Sometimes it's super overwhelming to just see the impending deadline coming around the corner. And then you're just like, there's no way I'm going to get this done. But, this is something, that we all kind of have to recognize. And when we kind of identify the causes of our writer's block and we really reflect, that's where we can begin and we can start to kind of mitigate and kind of avoid and take back the control that we need to get back to writing. So that's what I'm going to ask you to do right now. We're going to do a little bit of reflecting. So these are some of the questions that I'd like you to consider. Take out a piece of paper or your laptop, wherever you want to write. So please consider, why do you get stuck? What are the causes of your stuckness? What makes you stuck? What are some of the feelings or reactions you have when you get stuck? Like, how do you react? Do you shut down? Do you feel motivated? Do you just like avoid the situation completely? And at what points in your writing or at what times do you get stuck, right? Do you notice that you get stuck at a certain time more than others? The day, night, when you're distracted? And then how do you get stuck? So I'm gonna give you about 3 minutes to write. And if at any point you want to share your ideas, feel free to type it in the chat, especially if you're done. But the goal of this is really just to get some writing down. So start about 3 minutes. Ready? Go. My alarm went off. Maybe take a couple more seconds to finish up. Don't worry if your answer is not super, super detailed. We will kind of come back to this to reflect later. Second. It's definitely very rainy outside, so I apologize if you do hear some strange sounds from outside. That is the tree hitting the window and the rain. But yes, this will be up on YouTube later for your benefit, and also the PowerPoint will also be available. But I'll take a moment to read kind of what you guys have said in the comments and they're sharing. Jasmine says that she gets stuck because she doesn't know where in the paper to place certain thoughts in the paragraph. I definitely can relate to that. Very easy to get stuck. Procrastinating on by researching. I've definitely done that. I've definitely just spent so much more time doing the research than actually getting the writing done. And seeking feedback as well. So it's good. I'm glad to see that you guys are reflecting on this. This is super, super important. And it's also going to help you kind of identify like, okay, where do I get stuck? Where are my habits kind of getting in the way of me kind of moving on with my writing? What's hindering me? So with that, I'd like to share this quote by Helen Sword. So Helen Sword is a researcher who examined 1,323 academic staff, PhD students, and postdoc researchers in 15 countries to learn how they write. So what she found is writing is neither a daily routine nor a rare occurrence, neither an immovable constant nor a random event. The secret to academic success lies in a complex cluster of attributes and attitudes that I call their writing base. And BASE stands for behavioral habits of discipline and persistence, artisanal habits of craftsmanship and pride, social habits of collegiality and collaboration, and emotional habits of positivity and resilience. So, kind of this idea of habits. A lot of times we don't necessarily think about writing through this idea of habits, right? But habits are really what kind of collectively make our writing process, right? What it is we do before we write, after, how we approach writing. These are all sort of things that we consider or should consider, right? In terms of like what causes our writer's block, where is perfectionism coming from, what am I doing, or what can I do to improve or to help myself with. So I'd like to offer another little writing practice. This time we're going to talk about what are your writing habits. I will actually add here for Helen Sword. This quote comes specifically from a book called Airlight, Time and Space that is on a handout that is tied to this course shell. If you have access to it, that handout is really helpful. It has a bunch of resources and things that I'll kind of mention throughout this presentation, including some really helpful books, Helen Sword's book as well. So if you're someone who likes to read about writing and want to learn more about like this base idea and want to learn more about these habits, I definitely recommend it. Anyway, we're going to talk about writing and your habits. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes as well to kind of answer these. I do have more questions, but first, for these 3 questions, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to write. And so what I really want you to do is consider your habits personally, right? How do you start a writing assignment? What is your process of thinking through the work you have to do? How do you formulate ideas before you begin drafting? Where do you go to write? What do you need, right? Do you need good lighting, good sound? Do you need 10 cups of coffee? Do you need a little snack? What do you need before you start writing? Write for long periods of time or short bursts, right? Some people like to write for a couple hours. Some people, I need to write for 20 minutes and then I need a 5-minute break, or 30 minutes and then a 10-minute break. What works for you? Do you complete a whole section before moving on, or do you jump around? Do you edit as you write? I know my husband likes to do that. When do you get feedback? Do you even get feedback, or do you prefer just to kind of strip home? These are all kind of things that I want you to consider. And I'll give you another 3 minutes to kind of think about this, and hopefully you can write that down. And as always, feel free to share in the chat any light bulb moments that you have. So I'll start the timer now. 3 minutes. Ready? Go. Couple more seconds. I do have a couple more questions. I'll also give you 3 minutes to start these. I'll give you start with an outline, find those ideas. Pomodoro technique. I, believe it or not, have never tried that. So yeah, there's some great stuff here in the comments. Immerse yourself with a topic before you write. Go on YouTube, do some research. That's awesome. Awesome. It's great to see your guys' ideas of the kit. This is perfect. But yes, I have 3 more questions for you guys to consider on top of your process for your writing habits, right? How do you revise and edit? What lets you know that the piece is finally finished? How do you procrastinate? This one's important for me because I'm a big procrastinator. How do you motivate yourself to get back on track, back into writing, especially when you don't want to? So I'll give you another 3 more minutes to kind of reflect on these. 3 minutes starting now. Oh, I see some great feedback in the comments. I even saw someone commented that they need to have the right chair, a chair with a back. Right? Like I need to be in a certain type of setting in order to write. Right? It has to have a back, otherwise my back will be fatigued and I'll want to get out of there. And I won't commit to the writing if I'm uncomfortable. Motivating yourself also. Positive feedback from your advisor and committee is great to spark your interest. Edit when you realize you're being redundant. Work it through with some colleagues. That's a great idea. That's a great strategy. Working through it with someone else can also help motivate you, right? Kind of hear, like, if you're editing with someone else, you can kind of hear, oh, that sounds a little bit strange. I didn't realize that until I read it out loud to you or until you pointed it out to me. Yeah. I procrastinate by allowing my iPhone to hijack all my attention. Yep. Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. Technology, right? Such a great tool and yet our downfall, right? Sometimes. Lockdown apps. Yeah. Lockdown apps definitely reduce some distractions. We're actually going to go over some of those ways too later. So this is kind of this practice is just to kind of get you to write something down and to think about your habits because we can't identify ways to create and take control over the writer's block if we don't know what habits are either helping us or hindering us. So let's actually get into strategies to start writing. So one way to start writing is to take notes. This might seem simple. It might even seem like, what do you mean take notes? Like that's not really writing, right? But who says that writing is when you start with the title of your essay, right? Like, that doesn't have to be the start of your writing. Writing can be when you're taking notes about the things that you don't know yet, or things that you plan researching further, things that you already know, any plans that you're going to make. Um, you know, taking notes is a valid form of writing in itself, and a lot of things can come from that too. So it's important to recognize like all of these tools that are accessible to you. If you prefer to make notes on little sticky notes, like that's a perfectly acceptable way to plan your writing too. So anything to get you to just start super recognize. Okay? Also, think in terms of drafts. Right? Nobody has ever created the perfect first draft. Right? You're probably gonna have to write multiple, or in Anne Lamott's words, multiple shitty first drafts, right? But the goal is to get down a draft because if you don't have a draft, you have nothing to revise. You have nothing to work with, right? So it's more effective to just get things down and say, okay, this is my draft. I'm going in knowing that it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. This is just one of many, probably multiple drafts that I will do. And kind of getting in that mindset can really help you and kind of identify like separate right that perfectionism from your writing. Setting this aside and I know that this is going to need improvement. That's okay. Think in terms of drafts. Anybody who's told you that they've written a perfect first draft is also a liar. So don't feel like you have to have the perfect first draft either. So break down large tasks also into smaller ones, right? Nobody comes into, their writing space and just say, today I'm going to write my dissertation because that's like super overwhelming. That's a huge task, right? It's much more feasible and reasonable to say, okay, today I'm going to work on synthesizing two sources for my lit review. Or today, I'm going to focus on addressing my research question, making sure I'm articulating. That's much more feasible and reasonable and achievable, right? If you're able to achieve it and you feel like, okay, that's one thing off my checklist, you're more likely to feel like you're making progress and contributing to feelings of success, which will allow you to kind of move forward without feeling discouraged. Right? These are the little things that you can do to allow yourself to move forward. And plus, making it more manageable is going to reduce the amount of stress, right? You're not going to be so bogged down by just the overwhelming task of huge dissertation. Like, that's huge. But when you break it down into a smaller piece, it's a lot more like, all right, okay, I can do this. This is doable. From there, at the end of the day, you'll realize, I've written my dissertation because I broke it down into more feasible, consumable tasks. So similarly, making outlines or lists can be helpful, right? What is it that you need to do next? What are the things that you've done? What is something that you have to work on? Also, making lists for things as you're writing that distract you. So by this, I mean, sometimes you're writing and you're on a roll, and then you'll suddenly remember, oh no, I have to do the laundry, or I forgot to feed the dog, right? Or something like that, something that you have to do. I have to go buy something from the market. Even just writing that down in a list, kind of just acknowledging, okay, acknowledge these are things that I have to do them later, or set a time for them, can kind of help with the process too, right? Because sometimes we get bogged down with all the things that we have to do outside of our writing and academic lives, right? Sometimes making a list and getting that all down first can also help you prioritize. This is my writing space. I'm acknowledging my responsibilities, but I'm also allowing myself to be in this space and time right now to do my writing. Then sometimes we allow that distraction to completely derail us. Also, speed writing. Speed writing might be something that you might be into if you're competitive. If you have an extra 5 minutes before class or something, you might set aside time and say, okay, 5 minutes, I'm just going to do nonstop writing. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Ideally, it won't be, right? You might not even use grammatically clear sentences even. This might be just fun for you to do just as a challenge. Also kind of eliminates this idea that you have to edit, because the goal is not to edit. The goal is to just get things down quickly as much as you can. And you can do it multiple times as well. You don't have to do it just once. You'll be surprised at what can just come up from the kind of stream of consciousness, just writing something down very quickly. There's actually an app that it's on our resource handout that's in the Canvas shelf. The course shelf. That it's called, I believe it's called Disastrous Writing. And the name. It's called the Most Dangerous Writing App. That's the name of the app. And basically, in this app, you'll start writing, and the goal is to just keep writing. And if you stop writing for I think 5 or 10 seconds, writing completely erases. So there's this pressure to just keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. But it's kind of fun, and I tried it, and I was like, oh yeah, this could be really effective for when you're just really just want to motivate yourself and get something down. So I do recommend you try that app. But if that's a little bit too much, yeah, it's wild. it's really if you're just okay, I need that motivation. I need something to push me. But if that's a little bit too intimidating, you can also do some free writing, right, without the time, right, just a mind dump. You can set aside time and say, all right, I'm just going to free write. I'm not going to worry about grammar. I'm not going to worry about editing or even complete sentences. I'm just going to write what I know. I'm going to write about anything. And that also can help you, right? Because it's just free form. You're allowing yourself to write. You're allowing yourself to just be. I think that's really important when we're trying to create something. So that's what writing is, right? We're creating. And allowing yourself, turning off that editor mode, make a huge difference between starting and not starting. So likewise, turn off editing tools. If you're like me and you get distracted by the little squiggly line in Microsoft Word when it's this is not correct. And then sometimes I'm just that is correct. That is a word, right? And then I'll Google the word, and then I'll just spiral, and then I'll be on the internet, and then I'll stop writing because I'm just, thinking about, what did I do wrong? No, that is a word, and I'm fighting with this computer. Also, sometimes I know some writers write in Grammarly, and Grammarly can be a very helpful tool, but it can be so distracting if you're writing, because then it'll also do the same thing. It'll say, maybe you can use a better word, or this comma is misused. Just so distracting. So turn off those editing tools when you're in creator mode. really helpful. And lastly, explain it to someone. You feel like, okay, I have this idea, but maybe I'm not articulating it as well as I could. Explaining it to someone can make a world of difference, right? Because you can kind of fill in the gaps, or the person listening can kind of tell you, wait, how do those two things connect, right? And then you'll realize, oh, I didn't provide enough context, right? These are all ways that you can kind of recognize, oh, that's how, like, that's where I'm missing my information. Great. You can have hopefully a light bulb moment. Go in there and take notes and fill in that areas where you're potentially lacking. Right? So explaining it to someone, I know we hear that all the time. Teaching someone else can help you also learn and develop those strategies. All right, let's do some more practice. So for this one, again, this one's a little bit more of a warm up, I would say. It's a little bit quicker. I won't give you necessarily 3 minutes. I think I'll give you two for this one. For this one, I'd like you just to identify the task that you're currently working on or planning to do next, but be specific. So don't say, like, I'm going to work on my thesis or I'm going to work on the methodology section, right? Just be more specific. Like, I'm going to synthesize sources on topic B or my literature review, or I'm going to describe the research participants in the methods section, something specific and what you plan on doing next. And from there, also, the goal is to write as much as you can and do not stop, right? Like you're on the dangerous writing path, right? Write as much as you can. Don't stop. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about editing. Just go where your brain takes you. If you go off track and you go down a certain path, that's okay. Just let it go. Just go with the flow. And write fast. So you don't have to write complete sentences. And definitely, most definitely, do not edit. That's going to be the goal of this warm up real quick. So I'll give you 2 minutes. See how much you can write. Feel free to share in the chat when you're 2 minutes starting. More seconds. Finish up here for this one. Goal for this one is kind of really just do it. Just write anything down. Hopefully that kind of got your brain juices flowing. What it is that you need to work on next. That you plan on working on, what you have left to do. And again, I'm always looking at the chat, so if you want to share something, I look at them. But here, we're going to now look at these two prompts. Hopefully that warm-up has kind of got you into that kind of idea of what it is that you need to do next. For this one, you can pick either or both if you'd like to. But for one of them, I'd like you to consider pick the current task on your list and write everything you know about that topic. I'm going to give you 3 minutes for this. Note what sources discuss that information, if you have any, and what information do you still need to find. What tasks might also need to get done alongside this? This is prompt one. Or if you prefer, you can also write about what your next step is. What are you prepared for? What do you still need to do before starting? How can you break that step down into smaller, more manageable tasks? How else can you plan for it? So you can do either or both if you want. I'll give you 3 minutes for this. Again, feel free to share in the chat. But so again, you can do either or both. So 3 minutes starting now. Oh, 3 minutes is not a lot of time, but hopefully you were able to get something down. The goal here really is to just get that writing down on paper, right? So hopefully by now, this like little prompt, your brain juices are flowing and you kind of have an idea that you've gotten something done, you've gotten writing done, you kind of know where to start, and maybe now that you have something on paper, you have something to. So I hope you maybe also noticed that for this, we use some of the strategies that we talked about earlier, right? Like lists, maybe made some lists. This was timed activity. You were maybe doing some mind dumping because you didn't really have a lot of time to edit or do anything otherwise. So these are all things that you can kind of do for yourself on your own time too, or adapt these strategies even. All of these strategies that I'm sharing with you today can be adapted to suit your needs, whatever works best for you. Like to share that in the chat? strategies also that we haven't discussed so far, you're always welcome. I know some of you guys have mentioned some like lockdown apps and things like that. Huge things, ways to save, or I'm sorry, to help yourself write. But now, I'd actually like to get into making time to write. These prompts are very useful. Glad to hear it. Yeah, you can use these also. This PowerPoint will be available to you if you want to do this within a time constraint that is more feasible for you. You can adapt it. But yeah, making time to write, tracking your time, determining how long it takes you to do something, or even recognizing how much time Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever is taking time from your writing, right? That's also important, right? If I give myself 20 minutes to write, but I give myself a 5-minute break, maybe that's not feasible. Tracking that time is important and a good strategy in determining how much time do I actually really need? Do I need to sit down longer than an hour? Do I need less time? Will I get distracted? Will I not? Will I get fatigued? These are all important things. Also, identify productive times of day to write, right? So sometimes you might think, I'm really, really a morning person, or I absolutely have to write in the middle of the night. That's when I'm the most productive. I think this is a very really important to recognize, especially when you know that that's like when you're most productive. But it's also important to recognize that you might not always have the most optimal time of day, like we discussed before, which is why this next strategy is important, right? Carving out time. So we have very busy lives. Like you as a grad student certainly have so many things you have to juggle: social, academic, professional lives, family and friends, right? That's important. So sometimes we have to kind of carve out the time in our day to do these other things, like write. And it's also important to kind of to set that time for yourself and say, okay, maybe from 4 to 7 p.m., that's my writing time. Nobody's going to hopefully interrupt me, and kind of setting that boundary with family and friends too, and telling them, like, okay, I really have to hold myself accountable. Please do not distract me from 4 to 7 p.m. on Wednesday. Um, that's really important, right? Creating that time for yourself. And also, we often hear this idea that you have to write every day. If you're going to be a good writer, you should write every single day. And that might work for some people, but if it doesn't work for you, that's okay. So I know for me personally, if I had to write every day, it would then become a chore, and it would then become something on my brain that would kind of bog me down and say, "Oh no, I didn't write today. I didn't have time. I'm bad about myself. I'm a horrible writer," and it would like demotivate me for the rest of the week. Whereas it might be more realistic to say, okay, on Tuesday and Thursday evening, that's my writing time. That's most feasible because I don't have work, or I don't have this other thing that I have to do. And that's totally okay. Do what works for you. Because if you set all these kind of other expectations on what you should be doing, and if that's not working for you, it's going to completely demotivate you and contribute to this idea of like imposter syndrome and writer's block as well. Kind of think about that as well. It's okay to be kind to yourself and set realistic expectations for yourself at a pace that works for you. That's what's going to be more helpful. Also, you can chunk your writing. Right? So this goes back to like maybe write what you know, right? Who says that you have to start from like beginning to end, right? Maybe feeling like, okay, I know the most about my methodology, so I'm going to write that first. I'm going to create little more feasible tasks for my writing so that I can get that stuff done. Right? That's what's going to kind of allow you to continue. Because again, nobody comes in saying like, I'm going to write my whole dissertation today, right? That's so unrealistic, right? You breaking it down into more manageable tasks, like, okay, today I'm going to write up 2 results and respond to one of my research questions. That's more feasible. That's more likely going to increase your chances of success because you've actually done something, you check something on the list, and it'll kind of continue to motivate you as you go along, as opposed to, I didn't get a big majority of my dissertation done today or my thesis because I had this unrealistic expectation. Right? So also set regular goals, right? If that's easier for you, set like, okay, I'm going to write 2 pages today. I'm going to write a certain amount of words. Anything that helps you see progress, because again, having that progress to motivate you in tiny chunks gives you that serotonin, that dopamine that you need to kind of move forward. And that's what we're trying to do, right? And also, don't be afraid to reward yourself. Writing is difficult, and you deserve a chocolate bar every once in a while for achieving your things. Or, maybe you're going to say, I'm going to write 5 pages today, and I get to binge my favorite Netflix show, right? Rewarding yourself, acknowledging that you've achieved something, that also goes a long way in kind of motivating you and keeping you going. Because if we don't reward ourselves, no one's gonna. You got to do that, and you're deserving of it. So definitely do so. There's an application actually again on our resources handout that we have on the course show. One of the applications is called Written Kitten, and it's a little funny because basically you set a certain amount of word limit, and once you hit that limit of once you've checked that amount of words, a picture of a cat comes up. So it's very cute, and if you need like a little boost of serotonin every time you're writing, so let's say you said it's 500 words. Once you hit 500 words, a picture of a cat will come up. I love it personally. It can be a little distracting, but I think it's like another way to reward yourself when you've achieved something. So that's just something interesting to consider. There's tons of tools out there for you to use to kind of make this whole process easier. So let's do some more practice. So again, we have two prompts here. This one I'd like to kind of give you an idea that you've listed your goals before, or to take the time now to list some of those goals and think about that in relation to your habits. So create or review a list of goals for the rest of the month this time and break down this task as small as you can and set the goals you want to accomplish for next week. Or if you've already kind of considered that, you want to be a little bit more specific, look at your calendar for next week and kind of decide when can you carve out times to write or what might you want to work on in those times. These are the two subjects or to the two prompts I'd like you to consider. If you have time, please do both, but it's okay if you just choose one. Again, I'm going to give you 3 minutes for this one, and feel free to share in the chat any of your thoughts or light bulb moments. Minutes starting now. Share any words that you give yourself about things that I can remember. Yeah, kind of babies asleep, right? Have other factors, right? That we have to consider. That kind of will help us determine what our schedule needs to be. Where I develop blocks, I'm not 100% set. Yeah, thinking about like goals, like what is it that you want to achieve, right? It's something that, I mean, we can even help you at the Writing Center too, kind of brainstorm those things too. The Writing Center is a great resource for these things. Where do we start, right? What are my goals? What do I want my goals to be? Sometimes just chatting with like a friend can kind of help you kind of flesh these things out too. It doesn't have to be all on paper. Right? Writing is kind of this huge idea and process, and again, habits and things that we can help you at the Writing Center too. Yeah, hopefully that again, this is just to get you thinking about those goals. And these might change too, right? You might determine later, right? Maybe just for this week you have a certain goal, but the next week you've changed your approach. This is just to get you thinking about it. So now we're going to get into strategies for maintaining focus. So one of the ways that you can do so is to find productive locations, right? If you know, okay, I need to be in a completely silent place, no sound, right? Maybe it might be better to just be in your room alone. Or I've got to go to a cafe because the background noise gives me, I like to turn out the background noise. That's what helps me. Finding the most productive location. Sometimes you might not even be able to find the most productive locations, and you actually have to just make the most productive location, right? You might find that your favorite cafe is closed, or it's the holidays, or something, or you don't have a car for the weekend, so you can't drive over there, or something like that. So you can just put on some like cafe jazz music and your earphones in your room, right? Trying to optimize and do the best things for us as writers, right? That if you can't find the most productive, make it the most productive with what you have, so that we're not limiting ourselves. But also eating and drinking. This seems so simple, so obvious, but I think a lot of times we forget how important it is to eat and be hydrated. So I know for me personally, I get so stressed out sometimes, or I get so focused and zoned in on what I'm doing that I'll notice like, okay, 5 hours have passed and I have not drinking or eaten a single thing. Right? This is so important. Your brain needs that to do things and sleep. right? Sleep, I think we underestimate that a lot, like, how much the brain needs. And then we kind of beat ourselves up for like, why can't I focus? And why can't I like just do this thing, this incredibly hard thing, when we're kind of setting ourselves up for difficulties when we don't like take care of our bodies and our minds. So this is also finding productive habits, right? Find what works for you, right? If you do better with short bursts, or if you do better with like long bursts. Like my husband, he needs like at least 4 hours chunk of time set aside for him to write. Whereas me, I need like, give me an hour, then I need to go get a drink and rehydrate, get a snack or something, and then come back to it, right? Find the habit that is most productive for you. You need that coffee, keep that coffee with you ahead of time, right? Prepared before, so that you're not just, oh, I need my coffee. Oh, I forgot to do this. Because that really can just distract you from the task at hand, right? So finding what works for you, what's the most effective and productive habit. Also, switch it up. Sometimes you have like a certain pathway or a certain way that you've done something, and for lack of a better way of explaining it, it gets a little stale, right? Switch it up. Maybe go to a different location, go to a different cafe, go to try a different way of writing. If you normally type on your computer, try doing handwriting. Write things by hand. You might find that you'll develop different habits or things that work for you that you wouldn't have otherwise noticed unless you had switched it up. This can be a great way to kind of maintain focus and kind of get you out of a rut, even too, that writer's block rut. If you just switch it up and change things, you change of pace, right? Really go a long way. And take breaks. Again, going back to the eating and drinking, we are not robots, right? As much as we'd like to be super amazing robots that produce amazing writing 100% of the time, breaks, and that's okay. Give yourself that break. Ride yourself a little walk, drink water, eat, have a snack, take a break. That's okay. And figure out what flow works for you, right? It doesn't have to be snacking all the time, or maybe it'd be better to have a snack with you or something like that. Whatever works for you. This is completely adaptable. It's just important that you make sure that you are taking those breaks. Also, release frustrations, right? Sometimes we have a lot on our heads, in our heads. We have a lot on our plate. So, take that time to, I need to go to the gym. I need to get out all this frustration, or I need to do that laundry. I need to clean up. I need to do all of these things. That'll also help eliminate a lot of distractions because you've already done them, right? You can say, okay, I did my laundry, went to the gym, did my obligations. Or if you're just frustrated in general, just scream, dance, do whatever it is that you need to do to let all that frustration out before you come to the writing table. Because when we have all of these things on our shoulders, it's really difficult, right? It's tough on us. Um, as long as you don't use this as a way to procrastinate, because I know a lot of times when I'm supposed to write, I'll suddenly say, "Oh, those dishes need to." So I will go over to the kitchen and I'll wash. I'm like, "Oh, I need to fold that laundry," and then all of a sudden my house is very, very clean. Like my house has never been cleaner than when there's an upcoming deadline for something, because that is when I'm trying to completely avoid writing. So as long as you're kind of maintaining that, letting those frustrations out, making sure your obligations are in check, but don't use that as a way to procrastinate like I do. Don't use that to avoid the task at hand. And all right, for our last practice here, this is going back to what we did in the very beginning when we were considering habits. So if you still have that sheet of paper with you, you can bring that out and kind of consider this year. So what habits, tools, locations, times for writing, break times, and break activities are working well for you so far this week? What habits, tools, locations, and everything are not working well for you this week? And how can you make adjustments to improve your ability to focus today and later this week? That's what this prompt is for. I will give you another 3 minutes to work on this and kind of reflect with all of the things considered from our presentation so far. What is working for you? What is not? What can you adjust? What can you adapt? As always, I know you're chat, which is cool. All your guys' strategies and your ideas. But I will give you 3 minutes for this one. Starting now. This one. Hopefully from these writing prompts and practices, you have at least something down, and you at least you can say you have something. And that's all what it's all about is getting started, right? Sometimes this perfectionism and the writer's block, these huge things, and amongst everything else, right? Our social, professional, personal lives, all these things that kind of block us from getting started. Sometimes it's as simple as just getting it down, right? Don't punish yourself for not having perfect writing. Just get it down. That's all it takes. I know the comments, having goals and dividing them into manageable tasks can get a little difficult, that's for sure. Again, talking to someone else through your goals and your tasks, or maybe even making them more specific, even as more general, can help with that. Coming to the writing center also can. It's not easy. Again, don't feel like if you haven't answered these prompts like perfectly to a T in detail that it's something's wrong. This is just to get you started and thinking about it, and later you can kind of come back. Right, writing is a process. You can come back, assess. Okay, what's working? What's not working? What do I need to do? How can I kind of prioritize and manage tasks or break my ideas into tasks? But the last thing I'm going to leave you here with are some general tips. Right? So get support from others. Like I've been saying, it's okay to ask somebody to help you, right? Someone who's going to motivate you to write. Come to the writing center. We are here literally for that, to help you get those ideas down, or if you already have ideas down, process those things in a way that's easier for you. Create goals, even. We can help with that. If you want to, you can share some strategies in the chat too. Things that you do that we haven't mentioned. That it's always helpful to see what others are doing, right? Your colleagues. What are you guys all doing? Oh, I never thought of doing that. Didn't even know, right? That can be a huge help. Right? And give yourself some credit, right? You're here for a reason. All your hard work. Now I know grad school. You just started. You get that imposter syndrome, right? You're here for a reason, and if you get any writing done, that is writing, and that is valid, and that should be recognized as well, right? Give yourself some credit when you've written something down. That, note or a piece of paper can go long ways into starting something incredible, right? Some of the best writers, some of the best ideas have been written on a napkin, right? It just takes that, right? Just start. It doesn't have to be perfect. Give yourself that credit. No one's first few drafts are good. Also, we said this before. Anybody who tells you otherwise is a liar. So don't compare yourselves to others. Writing is hard. And it's okay that's hard, because it's a process. There's so many tools and strategies that we have out there here to help you need it. And you are not your writing also. Please, please, please do not think that your writing reflects who you are as a person, that you're not good at things, that you shouldn't be in grad school, that you don't deserve to be in the field, that you're an imposter. You and your writing, two separate things, right? And writing is always changing. That is something that you can shift into something else, right? And if you change your mind, you can start again, right? It's not you, right? So allow yourself that kindness. You are not your writing. And also listen to advice. If you get feedback from your professors or from colleagues, it's helpful. Using that to revise and improve and develop more skills is also very, very important part of the writing process. So in finding guidance through texts, if you're like me and you like to read about writing, these are the texts that we've kind of talked about before with Helen Sword: Air and Light and Time and Space. And then a couple more here that you might be interested in. I will like to warn you to please not use this as a procrastination tool, right? So if you're like me, you like to read, and do all the research and prep before you do the big task. And then you're like, but I'm reading about writing, so I'm being productive, right? But not really, right? Okay, so don't lie to yourself. So don't use this as a way to procrastinate like I would. But these can be very, very helpful self-help. This will also be on the handout that is in the bookshelf. And finally, I'll leave you here with finding guidance. Finding guidance at UNLV. Seek advice and guidance from professors, of course, mentors, people in the field. There's people out there who have a lot of experience who can help you, and it's okay to ask for help. Attend workshops like these, right? There's tons of things that you can learn that you might have not otherwise considered if you don't attend a workshop. Make appointments with career services or academic advisor. Realize what it is that you want. This can kind of help you make your goals too, as well, if you struggle with making goals. Come to the writing center, as I've been saying. We can help you with any step of the writing process. We can help you, pretty much any step. You don't have to have anything written either. You just need someone to talk to and get your ideas down. We're there for you. and use online resources. Like the handout I keep going on and on about has tons of resources that you can use. And you might discover one that really works for you and hopefully will stick for the rest of your writing career. So again, writing is a process. It's gonna be here with us forever. So we gotta punch that perfectionism and writer's block out of the way to allow us to be the best writers that we can. Thank you for the comment in the chat. This is where I'm leaving you here today. I hope that this is helpful for you. Again, I really recommend that handout. This PowerPoint will also be available for you. Want to look back on the prompts, or if you need to kind of flesh out your prompts a little bit more, it's all available. Thank you for your time. That was helpful.
All right, yes, thank you so much for sharing your time and expertise with us today, Leah. And I thank all of you that joined us to learn about today's topic. So we will be posting this workshop on the Graduate College YouTube channel, like I said earlier, for your reference, which you can find on the website. For those of you that are going to be joining us for the 2:30 workshop, we'll be in the same room. We'll give everyone a few minutes to kind of decompress between. So we'll go ahead and stop the recording now, and we'll see some of y'all at 2:30. Thank you so much again, Leah.
Thank you.